Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 530 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jay Cohn.
And I'm Janelle Slade. The future of the Colstrip power plants takes front and center today in Helena.
Montana lawmakers debating a bill today to potentially save the plants in eastern Montana as a Senate hearing attracts a standing room only crowd.
Senate Bill 331 has been touted by supporters as the savior for Colstrip, a rescue bill that will secure jobs and long-term viability for the Colstrip power complex.
Opponents, though, also showed up in force questioning the wisdom of this bill that leaves Northwestern customers on the hook for the cost. Billings Republican Senator Tom Richmond is the bill's chief sponsor. He told the committee that his bill is all about securing reliable power that will benefit Montana consumers. It would guarantee that Northwestern can charge its ratepayers $75 million over 10 years for the cost of the newly acquired 50 megawatts from Colstrip Unit 4.
After a roller coaster ride through the state Senate last week, that culminated with the bill's passage. Today, the measure was before the House Energy and Technology Committee. After hearing more than 2 hours of testimony, the committee took no final action. Well, tonight at 10, Chief Political Reporter Mike Dennison will have complete coverage of today's testimony on the controversial Colstrip bill.
In other news, a fire yesterday in Lame Deer spread over 1,760 acres before it was contained.
Q2's Zoe Zandora has been following this story and is standing by now with new information. Zoe.
Thanks, Jay and Janelle. We learned earlier today what caused the grass fire in Lame Deer. Rosebud County Sheriff Alan Fulton tells us the fire started at a home but quickly spread. Now, I spoke with Adam Wolf, the Northern Cheyenne Fire Management Officer, who told me the home where the fire originated belongs to Kenneth Birdchief. Wolf says the fire was started by a wood stove inside the home, and Chief had only a matter of moments to escape through a window, but did make it out safely. The fire was contained last night after burning through 1,766 acres, threatening houses and structures in the area. U.S. Highway 212 and Montana Highway 39 temporarily closed but reopened by 7:30 last night. The two facilities were ordered to evacuate due to smoke concerns, and homes along Highway 39 were also preparing to evacuate, but crews contained the edge of the fire before an evacuation did take place. And Wolf told me that crews worked tirelessly all day without even having time to eat to help save the structure that was in danger. He said it was a real community effort to save the structure, which was the only store in town, but luckily they were able to save it. Jay and Janelle.
All right, thank you, Zoe. Good news there.
On the weather scene, Bob, today has been a good reminder of those April showers, but do we really have to prepare for snow?
Yeah, we got some snow in the forecast for you. Let me show you what's happening. We're starting off with scattered rain showers moving into western Montana, and it'll continue to do so throughout the next day or so. Through Tuesday, we're looking at snow off and on, but a low pressure cell moving over Yellowstone Park is going to start pulling in a little snow into this area. Now watch what happens. That low drops a little bit farther south into Wyoming tomorrow night. Then by Wednesday morning, it drops farther, and all that rain starts changing over to snow. Look at that, all throughout most of eastern Montana, including Billings all the way up to Great Falls. Then after that, the whole thing starts to pull away. You see the snow moves around that low pressure cell into the Nebraska Panhandle. Then after that, we're going to see a lot of snow out of this. In the Billings area, we're going to see about maybe 1 to 2 inches of snow. And if it all comes down as snow, Sheridan could be looking at, that's right, 14 to 20 inches of snow possible, because they're at the outer edges of this storm, which is probably going to be a blizzard in the Central Plains. We'll have more on that coming up in a few more minutes.
All right, thanks so much, Bob.
A 24-year-old man who was shot and killed at Lee's Saloon in the Billings South Side over the weekend, now identified as Shane Nez Pierce.
Yellowstone County Deputy Coroner Richard Hoffman tells us that Nez Pierce died from multiple gunshot wounds. Now, the shooting happened at Lee's Saloon at 530 South 27th Street a little before 2 a.m. on Saturday. A 28-year-old Billings man was also taken to the hospital with injuries.
And we're told a third man, who is also 24 years old, also suffered injuries, but was not treated at the hospital. At this time, no suspects are in custody. Police are still investigating this incident as a homicide.
Investigators are asking anyone with information to call Crime Stoppers or Billings Police.
A 17-year-old lucky to be alive after being attacked by a grizzly bear Sunday near Ennis, Montana. Now, the teenager was hiking south of Ennis when he says he heard a thump behind him, but when he turned around to investigate, a bear was charging directly at him. Although the man was carrying bear spray, he couldn't use it before the bear was on top of him, and at one point the bear let go and the teen was able to escape, but then knocked to the ground again, face down and pinned by the bear once again. This time, the man was able to reach over his shoulder and spray the bear. Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks officials say that bear spray likely the reason this teen was able to escape the attack with only minor injuries.
Things could have been much different for this boy. He's very lucky. He did a lot of things right, you know, a big part of that is caring and knowing how to use bear spray. That's something we really encourage people to do. You know, in addition to just being cautious, being aware of your surroundings, and using caution.
FWP reminds us that bear sightings are becoming more and more common as the weather warms up this spring. And officials warn that surprise encounters exactly like this one could become more common as the bears begin their search for food following hibernation.
New details tonight regarding the condition of a Park County Sheriff's deputy injured in a head-on crash. Deputy Brian Elliott Pearson is now listed in fair condition after completing 2 successful surgeries. Now, the crash happened late Friday night on Highway 89 South, just south of Livingston. Now, authorities say 53-year-old Sean Schmitz of Columbus also died in the crash. Pearson was flown by ambulance to Billings for care. The Montana Highway Patrol says Schmitz's car left its lane and collided with the deputy in his lane.
The next time you fill up your gas tank, it's going to cost you more. In fact, here in Billings, gas prices have jumped over 17 cents a gallon over just the past week. The average cost for a gallon of gasoline in the Billings area, $2.62 a gallon. That according to the gas tracking website GasBuddy.com. Now, gas prices in Billings are 31 cents a gallon higher than they were just a month ago. Compared to a year ago, local pump prices are 10 cents per gallon higher. By the way, the cheapest pump price in Billings is listed at $2.45 a gallon.
A bill to help Montana firefighters who face on-the-job medical challenges has passed the Montana House, clearing another hurdle on its way to the governor's desk. Senate Bill 160 passed its final reading this afternoon. The health and safety bill will provide coverage to firefighters who develop illnesses related to their job. This is the furthest the bill has made it during the firefighters' 2-decade campaign. Now, the bill will now head back to the Senate for approval before it lands on the governor's desk.
Also in Helena, state lawmakers will be holding a hearing this week on a major reform to the state's medical marijuana system. As
MTN's Jonathan Ambarian reports, the bill would dramatically change the way patients receive their medical marijuana.
2 years after the Montana legislature passed a bill to overhaul the state's medical marijuana laws, Democratic Senator Tom Jacobson of Great Falls says more changes are needed.
I mean, this is all brand new to Montana. We've not really done things to this extent in the past. We knew there would be some changes that would have to come about.
Jacobson is sponsoring Senate Bill 265. It would make a number of changes, including increasing the tax on medical marijuana providers from 2% to 4%. Jacobson says the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services isn't receiving enough tax revenue to administer the medical marijuana program.
Rather than hamstringing the department in, not being able to further implement these rules, we wanted to make sure they had adequate funds to implement the statute.
But the biggest change, added as an amendment in the Senate, would be untethering patients from providers. Currently, patients who do not grow their own marijuana must choose a single provider they will buy marijuana from.
Being tied to one provider, though it creates some ease in monitoring, it creates difficulties on the patient's part when they need to get their medical marijuana.
Jacobson says removing that restriction would help patients who need medicine but can't get to their approved provider. SB 265 would instead limit each patient to buying 5 ounces of marijuana a month. Their purchases would be tracked using their medical marijuana card.
You scan your card, it says, oh, you've purchased your allotment, for the month, or you've already gotten it from this place, so you can't get multiple.
DPHHS leaders say they're already working to determine what steps they would need to take to implement untethering by July 2020 if the bill passes. In Helena, Jonathan Ambarian, MTN News.
Thanks, Jonathan. Earlier, Senate Bill 265 passed the Senate on a 36-14 vote.
Next up, it'll be heard tomorrow morning before the House Taxation Committee.
Well, coming up on tonight's 5:30 News, it's a playground for everyone, and the project is nearing construction, but a local PTA needs a little more help to get swinging.
And later in sports tonight, the Montana High School Association will no longer ban the use of tribal flags during the national anthem. Details on the big policy change coming up.
You're watching MTN News with Janelle Slade and Russ Riesinger, Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire, and sports with Scott Breen. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.